Hey, it's DeagleBeagle, and I think I wanted to make a tier list of battle spot doubles for VGC 23 in a sense. But this was before the Series 1 rules were announced. Now, this tier list was in the very early stages. Not very early, but the early stages before Series 1 was a tier, but it was like this list I edited it a lot before series 1, so it's kind of like right before series 1 is this tier list. So of course I added way more Pokemon to this or that, and this was before OTS was declared as the format. I believe that's still the format for series 2, but I'll have to double check. So certain Pokemon like Amoonguss should actually be up higher, but I'll go over that soon. So the Pokemon that I think have top tier potential, or probably will be top tier. Top tier potential means that it could be top tier, um, not necessarily top tier. But I'm gonna say the ones that I think are probably gonna be top tier. By top tier, I mean they're good, like not only kind of on their own, but they they if they're not completely good on their own, then they help some other ally on the team. So like a weather Pokemon like Torkoal, while it wouldn't be that good if you didn't use chlorophyll or photosynthesis or trick room with it, it allows Pokemon with those things like photosynthesis and whatnot to be used really well. If you were just using it for Trick Room and not using it for its weather other than boosting its own special attack, I'd even say it's like great tier or whatever, or high tier, or whatever you want to call it. People like to use the S or the whatever letters, but I don't I don't know, you can. It's pretty much the same thing as what I would use. It's just maybe defining it a little bit differently, and there's probably more tier categories. I don't I don't know if there really should be that many tier categories. At most, I would think there should be about 4, because you need to say which Pokemon are like bad in like all circumstances, which are, I guess they're not bad in all circumstances maybe, but originally I kind of thought these Pokemon were bad in all circumstances, like you should never use it. Now I have changed my mind on a few Pokemon like Drifblim, and maybe Dosh Bun is not bad tier, but it's viable instead of just like always bad. But I mean, Clodsire probably the same thing too, unless maybe you have an argument with it with Haze and Unaware to counter Dondozo. But there's probably better Pokemon that can do that. Frostmoss and Oricorio are just gonna be bad still. Now, the top tier Pokemon, I'd say, I remember the usage, and the usage was very high for Fluttermane, Torkoal. Hatterene wasn't. That's funny I put Hatterene in here because I don't think it was used that much by people. I think I just know it's really good and underrated, and most people just, I don't know why they just don't use it. I guess partly because Hatterene's mostly good for like hard Trick Room, but outside of that, it's not necessarily that good, and you need like Indeedee with it to do pretty well. Normally people use Armor Rouge instead. Tinglu's not allowed, so ignore the ruins Pokemon like Tinglu, Chiyu, Chien-Pao, and Woquien is not even top tier potential because I tried it out. It just wasn't very good. Um, Not allowed anyways, so it doesn't even matter. Indeedee F is top tier. Indeedee male, I don't believe Indeedee male really has a huge niche. What does it have that Indeedee female doesn't? Let's look at its stats really quick. So it has more special attack and more speed. So I suppose if you're using some weird inner focus set, you could use fake out with it and stuff. But If you're using Psychic Surge, maybe you could use Psychic Surge with it. If you're using it for like with Driftblim or Unburden, Haluchers, whatever, I guess I could kind of see that. But female one is generally better with Follow Me and whatnot. So male, I'd say, is not top tier, but it does have potentially a really good ability if you use Psychic Surge. Okay, so it's probably not top tier, but it has high potential. Tyranitar, top tier. Weather, great stats. Iron Hands, top tier. Even though, well, it does have better stats than Hariyama, even though it doesn't have guts. And you can't use it with Flame Orb. And then Grimmsnarl is probably top tier. Goldango, even though it does get countered by a lot of things that use either Brick Break or Flower Trick or whatever, so I don't really use Grimmsnarl anymore, but potentially it is top tier, even though it's on probably the lower side, I'd argue, because there's so many things people are using now to get around screens. It's really them, I think, trying to get around Dondozo, actually, and it just so happens to counter screens, like the Focus Energy stuff and whatnot. And there even is a little bit of Infiltrator Pokemon. At least I use one. And like a Dragapult. And then Great Tusk, probably going to be top tier. Pretty much all the Pokemon that have Photosynthesis. Roaring Moon, the only way I think it possibly would be top tier maybe is with a Terrastall, but normally I consider pretty much all Pokemon that are bad unless they Terrastall on average to be not top tier, because you kind of are relying on the Terrastall to save you in a sense, and if you Terrastall, then one of your allies can't Terrastall. So I kind of want to say Roaring Moon is not top tier, that it's like almost, but it's like great tier maybe. Not saying it's bad, but it requires more resources. It reminds me of Hydreigon. And then Iron Jugulis is probably barely top tier because it does have high stats. And I think, yeah, better defensive typing than Hydreigon and similar Pokemon to it. A little bit better normally than Bombardier too. Now, Mimikyu might, it's potentially top tier with Disguise, but in reality, I'd say it's not top tier. I'd say it's probably like great tier because I should really define these tiers really quick. Top tier, so it's great on almost every team without needing much synergy. Pokemon that might need synergy, or Pokemon that are not really good by themselves, but good possibly with like a certain ally. It would be a classic example would be a chlorophyll Pokemon like Sawsbuck, a Swift Swimmer. I mean, Iron Thorns is good, but it's not so good that I don't know if I would make it top tier, because there's other Pokemon like Tar that could probably do about as well or better for even what you're trying to do. Even though I think Tar gets Dragon Dance. Tyranitar, yeah, and you could do something similar to that Pokemon with Crunch, but you wouldn't have Booster Energy or Electric Train and whatnot. But it would probably be better because it boosts its own special defense with Sandstream, does some chip damage, and let's see, the next Pokemon, Brute Bonnet, would probably be top tier because it has Spore and powerful attacks, especially in open team sheets. It would be probably used even more than Amoonguss, because Amoongus's main issue, especially before open team sheets, is that you don't know which Pokemon counters Spore, and it made it inconsistent. And then if you can't Spore anything consistently, then it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, you would have to mostly just Rage Powder and whatnot. And I think Brute Bonnet can actually Rage Powder, but it you could use Rage Powder with it, but you could also use it's more powerful attacking moves. So I expect Brute Bonnet to be top tier. Pelipper, yeah, weather Pokemon to counter all the photosynthesis. I think, yeah, actually, I had a really good Pelipper team that had Grimmsnarl and screens, but then the season changed to where all these Pokemon that relied on Sun were banned, and it's like it made Pelipper a lot worse because Torkoal was used a lot less after that, and Photosynthesis Mons 0, so Pelipper didn't counter them as much. But it was still pretty good in Series 1. Garchomp, of course, it's a great fast Pokemon that has a high base dot total. Dragonite seemed pretty good to me. Arcanine, I think some of these Pokemon with Intimidate I just had in the top tier potential because they potentially were top tier, even though we're realizing now that everyone's like spamming Defiant and whatnot. So if you're using Intimidate, it's like probably about as much as of a liability as an asset, even though you can intimidate some teams that happen to run some physical Pokemon but not Defiant, like the Tyranitar Lycanroc teams, even though they probably should be running Defiant to counter people using Intimidate to counter that lead, even though they normally do counter the Intimidate Pokemon though with the double rock slide. But there are some intimidators that people are being smart with now and using like Tauros Water or Tauros Fire to counter. Now, Dragonite. So, of course, this is missing some things because I have changed my mind. I should show you after San Diego Regionals. I'll probably, after I ask my friend if I can, that I've been sharing some of these tiers with. If he says okay, then I'll. Well, I guess it's mine, so I can technically just release it, but I just want to have a talk with him first. And Salamence and Arcanine, really, Crocodile's not that good either, but I put a lot of the Intimidators as top tier potential, like Gyarados and whatnot, because they might have been, because the Intimidate's historically been a great ability, but this year I'd say not so much. Rotom, Wash, you could use Zoom Lens with it, but I'm finding now there's so many good slow Pokemon that like you're gonna go last a lot of times anyways. I mean, I should say first a lot of times anyways, and then you'll possibly miss your attack and Zoom Lens might not be worth it. Like you might be going against a slower King Gambit or whatnot, so maybe, but you might want to just use like Citrus with it. And I wouldn't say Rotom Wash is really top tier anymore because it is if it hits its moves, but you could miss Hydro Pump, and I suppose you could use Terra Water Blast, but would you really want to Terra it just for that? I mean, probably not. Okay, let's see. Iron Treads. Oh, Iron Treads is like Tyranitar, similar, except it has different typing and 4 times weak to ground. That is the one problem with it. And then no, Iron Treads, never mind, that's different than Iron Thorns. Iron Treads is the ground steel type, so you would have like Steel Roller or Heavy Slam or whatever, but typically I'd say Great Tusk is better than Iron Treads, but potentially it could be really good with Photosynthesis. So again, this isn't really a tier list, this is more like a potential tier list, and or more like a tier list that needs a lot of fixes after hindsight. Some of these other Pokemon are decent, like in Trick Room, like Crabominable, even though Hariyama or Iron Hands, I guess, would be probably better. I should actually move Pincursion probably up to top tier because the fact, same with Lilligant too. Possibly, even though Lilligant does rely on an ally technically for its speed, So maybe it's not top tier, but it seemed like it because Lilligant Torkoal was beating a lot of teams. Like potentially they could mess up the weather though. So Lilligant may not be super consistent either with an 80, because even with Wildlands you have like an 82.5% sleep powder, but maybe it is top tier with open team sheets because you know who their Pokemon is that can wall a sleep powder, but it will miss a lot. Might be worth the risk though. And with Wildlands, you also have a 99% chance of hitting them with Leaf Storm. Then Brig Giraffe, I'd say, is probably top tier. And again, with Tatsugiri Dondozo, even though at first it didn't seem like it was top tier because they could just use Murkrow, but yeah, so maybe I don't know. Maybe it isn't top tier. Still, it might still not be top tier because in open team sheets too, and with everyone knowing they should be countering Dondozo for regionals, I don't know if I want that spotlight on me. Like I might want to just use something that people don't prepare for. Iron Bundles probably not top tier, but it can do some stuff, especially in with Abomasnow. But still, with Abomasnow, it's like you're mostly just using ice moves, and then I found you don't have enough coverage, even with a water move. And you might have to use Terra Water Blast just to hit something accurately for coverage. Now, this was my old opinion before OTS. I liked Among Us, but not a ton because Spore was not consistent, and I was kind of feeling like I was forced to pollen puff my ally as like the only thing I could do besides Rage Powder in that case. And Toad Scroll is definite. I said it's more consistent than Among Us in the sense if you're just trying to spore spam because it can spore more Pokemon. And I used to think Scissor was like top tier until I found out how powerful Goldango was with Specs or Life Orb, and then everyone obviously caught on before regionals, so I couldn't really keep it a secret, especially since popular YouTubers were popularizing it too. Everyone just started countering it. Went. And then that's funny. In viable tier, I put Anahalape in there. I think at first, at first that was before people were using Mousehold, Anahalape, and other things. But even then, I think that was just so early in the format that we didn't see how good Anahalape really was with Rage Fist. So I was thinking at the time it's like a 50 power move and it could be potentially good, but I didn't know how good it was. Same with Dragapult. I'd say Dragapult. Well, actually, some of these tiers are different from Series 1. Because, yeah, so some of these tiers might even be different from Series 1. Like Anahalape, with all the Pokemon running around that super affected, maybe it is worse compared to Series 1. Because all these tiers were supposed to be for Battle Stadium doubles. And then certain Pokemon at the time weren't used in a really well fashion. Like Meowscarada, I think it felt like a Pokemon that didn't OHKO much and it was fragile. I don't know if I used Sash with it though. I probably used Choice Band with it and thought it was decent but not that good until I realized you could use it to counter certain things like Pokemon trying to boost up their stats and whatnot. So I'd say half of this list is probably correct, but then the other half I would probably change my opinion on what tier it's in based on experience, even though the metagame, like I said, for Battle Stadium doubles was different, and that's even different than Series 2 because it allows the Ruins Pokemon to be a part of the meta game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I still haven't really tested out Sylveon Terra Blast with ground. For some reason everyone uses water or fire with it, which is understandable, but ground would cover all the things that resist fairy. It super affects steel, rock. Actually, rock doesn't resist it, but steel, poison, and fire. But that's assuming they only have one typing. A lot of times they have two typings, so ground won't really add that much coverage necessarily. Let's see. I think I covered everything. Thanks for watching. These tier lists will change very soon.